Hi, everybody.
Hi.
You're everybody. Welcome to another broadcast and podcast, YouTube broadcast and a podcast of the Parent Pivot podcast. I am one of your hosts, Steve Cummings.
And I'm Julia Cummings.
And we say that every time we come on. I don't know why we have to keep introducing ourselves. I just feel like we do.
And if you are on YouTube, you see that we don't have the headphones.
Yes, Julia goes, why are we not have headphones on? Tell us why, Julia. Why do we not have headphones on?
Because I think they look stupid. But
because we can hear each other.
Right. We can hear each other where we are. And it suddenly occurred to me, like, why do we wear those? It's just essentially like...
Makes us look like podcasters.
Yeah. It's like makeup.
They're right here.
Putting on makeup. So
makeup over your ears.
Yeah. So I'm like, let's try it without.
So here we are without headphones. Yeah. We still have the same content.
We do.
We can still hear each other.
Yeah.
Anyway, hey, so today... let's talk about something that, as I was thinking about it, because you brought this up last week, we were on a walk. Yeah. And she goes, I got an idea for the podcast. I said, great, what is it? And she told me. And then, of course, we sit down a week later and I go, you ready to go? And she goes, well, what are we doing it on? And I said, well, we said this. And she goes, what did I say? So we're going to try to pull from the spirit and talk about something that I feel, as I've thought about it more and more, it really is kind of the centerpiece, the foundation of pivoting parents to becoming a partner, because there's so much transition going on in our lives. Mm-hmm. We're becoming empty nesters, and maybe we maybe you have kids at college and you still have some home, but it has started. It has started in some season or not, and as we are releasing these young birds out of the nest, guess what? They will crash and fall.
Absolutely.
So accept it.
And we have crashed and fallen. I mean, we know that our parenting hasn't been perfect. No one's is. And we know that we have crashed and messed up many times.
Go listen to any of the podcasts with us interviewing our kids.
Yeah.
But they've been so gracious back to us. And that's kind of where I wanted to go, is really this idea that everything that we talked about in all 85 podcasts that we've now done, I think we're on this is number 86. Wow.
We have a lot to say.
We've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Or we're at least addressing those that people we've sat with and talked with and went, here's some content. But really, it's the foundation of grace. Now, that's easy to say that, I get it. But we really want to take a deep dive into that. In fact, this morning I was reading, I use the YouVersion Bible app. I don't know why I'm wiggling my fingers.
Because your phone.
Yeah, because of my phone. But I go on a walk every morning, and I'm on the YouVersion Bible app. And I was reading today's devotional. And it was really about Romans 12:1, that whole chapter. And it really talks about being mistreated by someone and how we're supposed to respond. Mm-hmm. And the person doing the short devotional teaching was spot on, because in anything that happens where we're hurt, where it could be an adult child, it could be my spouse, it could be a friend, it could be somebody hurts me, wounds me, or even in our natural human reaction is, by golly, you can't do that to me. Mm-hmm. And we fight, we respond well, and that's just natural. So we're here to say we have the same issue. Mm-hmm. We were born on the same earth as you were, and we recognize that is our base of who we are. So here comes Jesus. Now, again, this podcast, you may not be a Jesus follower, and that's okay. But I think on this one, we're kind of going to particularly talk around a Christian scripture and themes.
Yeah, but even within that, when you're talking about grace, we all can give grace.
Grace is another way of saying giving someone the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the Christian world, you talk about grace as getting what you don't deserve. Or is that right? You get what you don't deserve, and mercy is not getting what you do deserve.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So grace is receiving something that you may not deserve, but somebody gives it to you anyway. I give you my forgiveness. I give you the ability to, what was it you just said? Believe the best about somebody. Right. So that's being gracious.
Yeah. So anyway, as I was reading my YouVersion devotional, this is what they were saying. It was coming down to loving our enemies. Now, I don't know about you, but every time I've heard that verse, whether I'm sitting in church, in the car, listening to podcasts, wherever, I'm thinking, okay, who are my enemies? I'm like, they're not lined up out there. They're not coming after
No,
me.
and they're not obvious.
And they're not obvious. But I would say enemies are anybody who mistreats you. Maybe someone's spoken negatively about you, and it can be hard to love those people, and it's hard to love unloving people, because like I said, our natural reaction is to fight back or shrink back or whatever. And yet Jesus did exactly that, though. He, when we were at our worst, he still loved us. So if you find it hard to bless those who mistreat you, here's what I would suggest. I keep talking about the pause button. I don't wake up in the morning going, how can I hurt Julia today? Do I, hon?
I certainly hope not.
Yeah, no.
But, yeah.
And I don't wake up thinking about anybody I can hurt today. I literally don't do that. It's just, there's something that I will say at some point, right? I'm meaning goodwill by it, but maybe it's not received that way because somebody else's way they're protecting their heart and their worldview of what they grew up in their home and making sense of their world, that becomes an offensive thing. And especially, we talked about this a few podcasts ago, do not do this through texting.
Yeah.
That's the worst case. But I mean, okay, so somebody mistreats me. The first thing I want to do is hit that pause button and going, okay, did I say it the wrong way? Could they have heard it a different way? And let me pray about how I'm going to respond to them. And I want to ask the Father about that. I want to ask him to soften my heart. Again, it starts with me. Yeah. Soften my heart and ask him for justice in this specific situation, but also for there to be restoration. You know, I don't need to seek justice. I mean, people who want to seek justice.
That is so not true. I am justice oriented, but not in relationships.
No, I know. No, you're not. You're very much a great relationship coach. In fact, you just had a session with somebody coaching them through a relationship. So no, I meant that kind of poking and fun because you can't see the elbow there. But yeah, when something goes wrong, because you want to stand up for what's right, but sometimes in standing up for what's right, you can fracture a relationship. Yeah. Is all I'm really saying. Yeah. But every one of us who exists as a person is somebody that Jesus wants to love. And when we make steps to love those who are loving, we're showing the love of Jesus. Mm-hmm. Sounds simple. Sunday school answer. I'm actually working on something. I'm going to share it on the podcast. I put it in my note. What did I call it? I do not need, ready? I do not need to be right. I do not need to be first. I do not need to be perfect. I do not need attention. I don't need acclaim. I don't need credit. Sweetheart, I don't need sex. I don't need respect, and I don't need validation. Now, there might be a long list of those others, but where I'm going with this...
And everybody can have their own list.
Exactly.
Like yeah.
Where I'm going with is that these are all roots to my normal self and my false identity or my false image that I have built up that I want to project to others. I want to show people that I'm first. I want to be top dog. I want to be right. I want all this credit, respect. I want that. And that's out of my false self. So I'm sitting here, I'm getting ready to do an intensive on true identity in a few more months. And I've been noticing this. And as a man, all of these may make me a man, but they won't make me a beloved son. Mm. And so that's kind of where I'm going with it. But where it comes with grace is I first need to release all those things that I hold on to that can cause a fracture in a relationship. Mm.
Can I say something about what you just said?
Yes, you can.
Because I want to make clarification.
Go for it.
When you say, but it won't make me a beloved son.
No.
But the fact of the matter is you are a beloved son no matter what.
You heard it wrong.
You don't have to do anything.
I said all these may make me quote unquote a man, but they won't make me a beloved son. Right.
Right. There's nothing that you can do yourself that would make you a beloved son.
That is correct. And
that's
I
my
get
point.
to that.
Yeah. Right. That's my point.
Because my next paragraph, no matter what I do or don't do, it doesn't change a thing. I know who I am and I'm completely loved by the Father. That will never change. It's my true identity, and I will fight to stay in this space every moment of my life.
So yes. What does that have to do with having adult children?
Well, when we have adult children, sometimes, again, we're still in the parenting mode. Like, I know better. Mm-hmm. And you don't. Right. I've known you for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And really, once that spouse gets married, somebody else on this planet now becomes the closest person and sees all the good, bad, and ugly with that person, helps to shape them because God calls them our Ezer Kenegdo. You're my Ezer Kenegdo. And now we change. But as parents pivoting to partners, I'm still holding on to all my experiences.
Mhm.
And I'm quick to judge. I'm quick to criticize because I haven't allowed any grace to let that person grow outside the box.
Right. And one thing that I hear sometimes in Christian circles, not as much in non-Christian circles, which is good, but this shouldn't be being said so much in Christian circles either, is that idea of head of the house. And it's been misconstrued in the Bible in some ways and abused. So if you are a Christian and the Bible is your worldview, I want to encourage. In fact, I'm going to have us post. I want to post Tim Keller sermon.
Tim Keller, I know that guy.
Yeah, that I would highly recommend because it really talks about this and kind of the abuse of what people have made into this idea. And so all that to say, like, when someone's throwing around the words the head of the house, it's usually not in a good sense, and there's a big piece missing there.
I'm wanting respect. You guys need to do what I do. I have final say. So again, it's talking about that normal self. Those who are in their true identity don't have to use and remind people what they are.
No, and they're not threatened by their partner's input or thoughts, and as you would do, you respect my input and my thoughts, and we mutually respect each other's input and thoughts and how we feel about things. And
I may joke with you that I'm the head of the house, but it's usually in a joking manner.
I've never heard you even joke.
Yeah, I don't think I've even joked about it. It's kind of like it's just like, hey, look at me. I need to be in control, and it's all about being. We're saying the opposite here. That if we can come from a place of grace, especially with our adult children.
Yeah.
Again, keeping our mouth shut and the welcome mat out. I mean, we keep going back to Jim Burns' book, Doing Life with Your Adult Children. If you'd like a copy, go look it up on Amazon. Jim Burns is the author, a friend of mine. Go look up the podcast. We did a great interview with him. Things, but really, it starts with me. You said for a long time, we will always be the parent. Okay, so we have that by birth order. God ordained it. So we never have to put our fist down and saying, I'm the parent, listen to me. And sometimes we talk in that way, though, even though we don't say that.
Yeah, and your kids can hear it because they've heard you say it before.
My way or the highway.
Yeah.
We're doing Christmas and we're doing our traditions and you guys show up at this time with da-da-da-da-da. And it's like,
this is just how we do it. Yeah. And I'm the leader, I'm the head. And I'm not saying that everybody's that way. It's just I've heard that a couple times in the last week, and so of course it's at the forefront of my mind.
We're getting close to the holidays. I mean, we're thinking about Thanksgiving here next month.
So yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, we could go on all these little different tangents, but let's get back to the grace piece. And with our adult children and showing them grace when they mess up, and hopefully they show us grace back. But it's up to us, as Steve said, like, we are always the parent. So you are always going to be the one that's looked to in a certain way, whether you like it or not. And which means that you hold more responsibility in it. It means that you are going to set the example of what it looks like to give grace in that situation, and to show your child grace and all of those things. So I hope that all makes sense. I feel like we're kind of talking in circles.
Well, no, we are. And, with grace comes the heart of humility,
Humility is
if
everything.
you have to say that you have humility, you don't have humility. You have what's called false humility.
I'd like to think I have humility.
Yeah. But, humility is like, I don't have to, again, that whole list of it, I don't have to be right. I don't have to be first. I, as a father and as a grandfather, have made mistakes and things. And I'm going to continue to make mistakes. But when I can own them, which means I say, you know what, that one's on me. I'm so sorry. Guess what? My relationships are staying free flow. They're open. There's nothing getting in there. Now, if there are some issues that are separating you from your adult kids, and we do have friends and we've talked to people on both ends. We've talked to adult children who have that going on with their parents, and we have parents
that have it with their kids.
Yeah.
Which we talked about last week. That was
we
the
did.
subject.
We did. And we don't need to keep beating a dead horse, but we wanted to come around this idea of grace is that needs to be on the forefront of our hearts and our minds, and slowing down whatever responses are happening.
Yeah, like when you talk about the pause button, what I'm picturing is the ability to stop, to not react, and to be able to say, how can I show grace to this person? How can I love this person best? What does that mean? What does that look like? And how can I be an example of grace to others? So yeah, that's kind of where my mind goes with that. The pause button and asking that question of yourself.
Right. And Romans 12 is a great place to go to read about that. As I was going through that this morning, and I'm scrolling through my phone right now, trying to find those right words that were in there. Love from the center of who you are. Don't fake it. Run for dear life from evil. Hold on for dear life to good. Be good friends who love deeply. Practice playing second fiddle. See, that's the thing. We want to play first fiddle.
What version?
This is the Message.
Oh, I'm like, never heard that version.
Don't burn out. Keep yourselves fueled and aflame. Be alert, servants of the Master. Cheerfully expectant. Don't quit in hard times. Pray all the harder. Help needy Christians. Be inventive in hospitality. Excuse me. Bless your enemies. No cursing under your breath. Okay. How many of you, raise your hand, have cursed under your breath?
I think we all have on some level.
You need to raise your hand. Oh. We're on YouTube. Okay. Laugh with your happy friends when they're happy. Share tears when they're down. Get along with each other. Don't be stuck up. Make friends with nobodies. Don't be the great somebody. That's the Message version of Romans 12, starting around verse 9 and 10. So, but it's this whole thing about playing second fiddle.
Yeah, not having to be number one.
Yeah, and grace fuels that. Grace and humility fuel that, and it's like, when we do that, not only are relationships pure and healthy and moving in the right direction, the Father's pleased. I feel better about myself. I'm in a state of great peace and freedom when I don't have all those things bothering me.
Yeah. One thing that I've heard you say a lot that I really respect is when you say, I don't need that person's approval, and you rest in the fact of that. Because a lot of people will demand from us certain viewpoints or actions or whatever. And sometimes sticking up for yourself is really difficult to be able to go, you know what, I don't have to have that person's approval. I don't have to do what they say. You may choose to if you love that person greatly. And if something's important to someone, we can always make the choice. I can say, you know what, I know this is important to Steve. I may not understand it, but to serve him and to love him well, I'm going to do this thing, whatever it is. But I love it when you sit back and you can say, you know what? I don't need to be heard and understood right now. I don't need this person's approval. And, I respect that a lot.
As I hear you say that, I'm thinking of two instances. So one, if your employer, whether it's your direct supervisor, your CEO, somebody who's just maybe, they're just coming at you like they're just not happy with your performance and that, and you're like thinking, man, no matter how hard I try, no matter what I do, I'm not getting their approval. So it's like, you know what? This is where I have learned I've got to step back on. I don't need that person's approval. I know I'm doing my best. Mm-hmm. Okay. I know I'm completely content with who I am. And the Father sees that. That's the only approval I need. Because sometimes, depending on how our days go, you may come home from a day and just be completely exhausted. And I need some type of respect or approval from you. And you don't have the energy. Your emotional tank is empty. And you're like, I just want to go in the bedroom and watch my TV show and cocoon up. And I go, great. But I'm not getting what I need. So where we tend to go is, I can get negative feelings toward her because I'm expecting her to do a job that she's not capable of doing at that moment. So that's why I have to make sure I hit the pause button and step back. It could be an adult child. maybe you're trying to get approval from them. They have moved out, they're on their own, they have not been in contact with you very much, and you're missing the contact. So you're trying to get their approval to say, because we're in that season of letting go, and I'm not feeling whole, I feel like I'm missing something. And that's the grieving process. We've talked about that.
Yeah, and you may not see that as quote unquote approval.
Yep.
But that it's still needing something from your adult child that feeds your soul on some level. And so what we're saying is basically you don't need that, and that needs to be coming from somewhere else. And to again give that person grace in that moment.
And even as I say that, I'm thinking of somebody that we've heard from who doesn't live in the U.S., and when they come back to visit, they're mostly connected to their friends, and things. And mom and dad play kind of the guilt trip of like, hey, how come you're not coming to see me, and things. And again, it becomes, what we're saying is, we need to extend grace first. Mm-hmm. We need to be our kids' biggest cheerleaders, chief encouragement officers. I'm always texting one of my boys, hey, I'm your CEO. Don't forget that. He knows it's chief encouragement officer. I want to be their biggest fans. And even when they're making mistakes and things, or they're not, quote unquote, doing it right, I'm not pointing it out. I'm not saying anything. In fact, I remember in the last week or so, one of the other boys said something in our chat. I go, you know what? The old Steve would have said something to correct them, and I sat there and thought to myself, I hit pause. I went, I don't need to send a text, and I don't need to tell him that he's off. Because basically it's going to fracture the relationship. And that's just going to bring up pain and trauma from the past. And we want that to settle and be off in the distant and not something that keeps getting drummed up. If I can initiate out of a heart of humility and always give my adult kids grace, life is going to go so much better for everybody.
Yeah. Grace is key. I suggest you take a big red, Sharpie and put it on a piece of paper and put it on your refrigerator or something to remind yourself if this is something that you struggle with, and you have a hard time keeping your mouth quiet, and
you don't have a pause button.
You don't have a pause button very well. Or you have the tendency to guilt your kids or to point out their wrong thinking or false thinking, or you haven't gotten your way, or whatever it is, put that on a refrigerator and let that be your go-to response of grace.
In fact, I would say this, let's give a homework assignment. Okay. So if you're a husband and wife and you've got adult kids and you're listening to us today or watching us on YouTube, sit down with each other and be vulnerable and honest and ask each other, hey, how do you see me? How do you experience me at giving grace to our adult kids? Be willing to listen and not attack. Okay. Don't be shot down that now you have all guilt and shame. Nobody's saying that you are a horrible mother and a horrible father. This is taking a time. I like watching NASCAR, and Julia's looking at me like, oh, here we go. But those guys come in to make a pit stop to get gas and change tires, okay, so that they can keep on going until the end of the race. That's what this is. That is coming into the pit stop, looking at your crew chief and saying, hey, do I need tires and gasoline? How am I doing on this part of giving grace? And be willing to listen and saying, how can we as a couple improve? Or maybe you're both great at it. Maybe you don't need to do that. But maybe get in the habit of even practicing that, like looking at areas and saying, how's this relationship with this adult child, that adult child? Am I too hard on them? How are we doing? And things like that.
So let me just say this too.
See, I always come up with some ideas.
No, that's a great idea. I love that idea. The person who is asking the question, you're addressing them saying, be willing to listen. The person who is answering the question needs to not be a finger pointer and saying you.
Yeah, you can't use you.
It needs to be very kind and gentle and more I feel statements, or this is what I see.
My experience has been.
Yeah.
We call it staying in your yard.
Yeah.
When you start a sentence off with you or you like to, see, if you're watching the YouTube podcast, I'm pointing my finger. If you're listening to me, I'm pointing my finger. Those are fighting words.
Right. So if you came to me and you asked that question and you said, well, you always do this and you do this and you really suck at this and you've ruined your relationship with so and so and blah, 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 blah. I'm messing up. That's not the way to do
No,
it.
it's coming together, and maybe don't just sit there and do this right after the podcast, but sometimes you have to be in the right space.
Yeah.
If Julie comes home on a Thursday and she's, spent all day with 6 or 7 clients in a row and she's driven an hour home, I am not going to talk to her about that in that first hour when she gets back. I'm probably going to wait a day and probably wait till the weekend when I can look in her eyes and see a softer, more gentler heart.
Yeah, I would not be prepared for that.
Yeah. But that would be a good first step on that. And then maybe even sometimes when you're in conversations or something, maybe you can have a signal to each other about hitting the pause button. Like, I don't know, maybe it's a wink or a word or, an obvious thing you can come up with to say, hey, this isn't the time to react right now. Let's hold on to this. Because again, we're working towards keeping our mouth shut. Mm-hmm. And then welcome Matt out. We want to pivot from that instructional parent to being a partner because we're raising responsible adults. Yeah. We want to love them. We just had our 5th grandchild born since our last podcast. Woo! Zion Campbell Cummings.
Yeah.
Born October 17th to Campbell and Ashley Cummings.
Yeah.
So we're enjoying that and things. And it's just kind of fun to watch the kids talk to each other about going through birth and coming home that day of. And we just sit back and we're not saying a word.
No.
We just let the moms talk to each other and we're like, go. This is what we wanted. We wanted responsible adults raising families, and we're not getting in there with our opinion or doing anything. And
we've talked about this before, just that our goal would be that when we're dead and gone, that they are loving each other well, that they're still friends, that they can trust each other, enjoy each other, and they don't need mom and dad to be the glue.
No,
that's a lot of what becomes important down the road. Because if we are always the glue, you hear these stories about when parents die and the kids start fighting over stuff or whatever. And it's like, I would never want to see that happen in my kids' lives. And if we've created an atmosphere where we don't give grace, where they haven't learned to give each other grace, right, all of those things, that there's a lot of stuff that can come down the pike later, and that's right, not the legacy that you desire to leave.
And I think as much as we have been able to, we're generous with what the Lord's blessed us with. We share our property, we've shared our home, we share our resources. They've seen that and they are doing the same thing, but we don't point the finger at them to do that. So a lot is more caught than taught.
Yeah.
And being a partner is letting them catch things, and grace is, if you're not a gracious person, they're probably not going to catch on to that. And it's going to rear its ugly head every once in a while.
They catch the negative too. I mean, our kids have caught negative things that we have left them.
Right. And we've come back to address those things because we want to keep the balance sheet down. You know what I'm saying? I don't want them coming. Hopefully at my memorial service, they have more fun. In fact, my memorial service needs to be a party. We are going to sing and dance. I will be singing and dancing when I'm in heaven, but I want the family to be doing that. I want you grieving over me because we all know where we're going.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to be the first one at the party if that's the way it happens. I don't know if it is or not, but yeah. So be gracious as much as you can. Let us know what thoughts you have. You can direct message us.
Yeah, I'd like to hear.
Parent Pivot Podcast on Instagram, on Facebook, and at gmail.com. So we're getting a lot of input from everybody now. Share this with friends.
Please like, share, rate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just a side note, I'm sorry, I'm drinking tea. A side note on the Facebook thing, if any of you are personal friends of mine and were my Facebook friends, I did not unfriend you or anything.
Yes.
We got kicked off the Facebook.
We did.
We're not sure why. The Parent Pivot Podcast Facebook page is still there, but our personal one
is
not. So if you happen to be listening to this and you are a personal friend, please don't think that you have been unfriended or something.
And we've been kind of lazy about restarting a new one.
Yeah, it doesn't excite me going through all of that all over again. asking friends to be friends and blah, blah, blah. So I don't
So
care.
share this in your Facebook feed for us, and please explain to everybody, because we're not on Facebook.
Yeah.
Hey, Facebook, they threw the gauntlet down and said, and basically the problem was I did not have a Facebook. I joined Julia's, and they don't want two people on one Facebook. And we had been doing that for a couple of years, and we have other friends that are doing it. But I think right after I posted something, it was literally within 30 seconds, they shut us down.
Yeah, we don't know what it was
And
about,
you know what? Social media is out there. People hear about this. I leave it in God's hands.
Yeah.
It's all fine. So
the other thing I wanted to share before we go, hold on one second. I've got to get this book. Is that book here? It is not here.
Which book?
The book of the person that we interviewed. And
she passed?
And she died.
Oh,
yeah.
I can go get it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Suzanne Morgan.
Suzanne Morgan?
Rorigan.
And we interviewed her a couple months back. She was probably the first interview that came up after we took our little short vacation sabbatical. And it was the story of her teenage son going through drugs and her just kind of her battle with that. And here we go. It's called Unconditional, and by Suzanne Rorigan. And she lost her battle with cancer. And
it went fast.
Died.
I mean, we were notified around September 11th, and I just got notified.
She got notified that her cancer was back.
It was back, and the time frame was going to be quick. And next thing I know, literally with 4 weeks later, we got the notification. Went, oh wow,
yeah.
She's got a husband, Ken, and her son, Nick.
Yeah. So our love and prayers go out to them. And if that was a book that you happened to read after we talked about it, that is the latest in her story. So she's dancing with Jesus.
She is. She's cancer free.
She's cancer free now. So anyway, I think that's all we have.
Okay, what am I putting in the show notes? Oh, a Tim Keller podcast.
I have a Tim Keller podcast that I want to share. It's more about marriage, but I think Tim Keller is so good at just bringing things home. He's really just a theologian. Well, not a he's somewhat of a theologian.
He's so gifted at understanding all of that and from all the viewpoints, because he's so well read from everybody, from philosophers to historians to whatever, and yet he can bring it down with the scripture and put it on what we call the cookies on the lower shelf, and you go, wow, I've never seen it that way before.
Well, and he's just not your typical preacher. He's not, he doesn't come from a theology of right and wrong as much as there's a lot of gray stuff out there, but it's all about the gospel.
He'll tell you the gospel changes everything.
Yeah.
It always comes down to that. If you guys don't know this, I work for City to City, which is a ministry that he founded out of Redeemer City to City Church in New York. And it's a worldwide ministry helping plant churches and create networks cross-denominationally around the largest cities in the world. And I go visit people in the Southeast and say thank you, and they support the ministry. So that's
and Tim Keller died himself a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was a year ago May.
Year ago May.
Yeah,
wow, it hasn't been that long. So
anyway,
we will put that in the show notes.
Yep.
So I don't really have a lot more.
Okay. Well, we just want to challenge you to be offering more grace to your adult kids.
Yeah.
And that will help you make that pivot a whole lot better and faster to becoming partners. We love the fact that we get a chance to come here every week and present some things that we're learning about. I mean, I shared with you some stuff that God spoke to my heart about and some of the things we've gone through with our adult kids. So we appreciate y'all listening, and we're going to be back next Tuesday with some more content on the Parent Pivot Podcast.
Bye.